It was a quiet afternoon in the small town of Riverfield when an unexpected incident changed the course of a family and the entire community. Claire, a girl of only 12 years old, lived with cerebral palsy. Despite the limitations this imposed on her, she always had a smile to offer those around her. Her mother, Laura, took her to the park every day where Claire enjoyed the view, the fresh air, and the few friends she had managed to make in the area. One afternoon, while they were playing in the park, a police officer patrolling the area began observing them from a distance. It was Officer Brock, known for his rigid and sometimes aggressive attitude toward those he considered problematic. Without apparent reason, he approached Laura and Claire and began asking uncomfortable questions. "Do you have permission to be here?" he asked in a harsh tone. Laura, surprised, tried to explain that they were just in the park like any other family. But Brock didn't seem satisfied. For reasons that escaped logic, he started to suspect the girl. Perhaps it was the wheelchair or the special equipment she carried with her. Or maybe it was simply the arrogance of a man used to abusing his authority. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me to the station. There's something suspicious about all this," he insisted. Laura, trying to protect her daughter and avoid confrontation, quickly began packing their things, though she could feel her indignation boiling inside. However, Officer Brock didn't stop there. In an impulsive act, he grabbed Claire's wheelchair and began pushing it, ignoring Laura's pleas for him to stop. The scene began to attract the attention of the few passers-by in the park. A desperate mother, a scared girl, and a police officer seemingly determined to exercise his power without limits. It was then that a tall, serious-looking man, dressed discreetly, appeared on the scene. No one knew that behind this calm and serene presence was one of the FBI's most skilled agents, a man with a long career in the agency, known for solving complex and dangerous cases. This man was Jack Thompson, Claire's father. Jack Thompson watched the situation from a distance with his heart racing. From where he stood, he could see Officer Brock holding his daughter violently. Every fiber of his being urged him to run and stop him, but as an FBI agent, he knew he had to handle it with calm and precision. However, when he saw his daughter's frightened face, any rational thought was pushed aside. He slowly approached without raising suspicion, while the officer continued yanking Claire's wheelchair roughly, and Laura tried to stop him, but Brock seemed to ignore her completely. It was then that Jack reached them, just beside Officer Brock, and with a firm, controlled voice said, "Officer, let go of my daughter." Officer Brock looked him up and down with disdain, not recognizing him and unaware of who he was, and challenged him. "And who are you? Is this child under investigation? Is there something suspicious?" Jack took a deep breath. He didn't want to make a scene, but it was clear that Brock had no intention of listening. In a low but imposing voice, he showed his FBI ID and said, "I'm Jack Thompson, FBI agent, and the father of this girl. I'm asking you one last time to let go of the wheelchair and explain why you're harassing my family." The officer's attitude changed immediately. His face showed a flicker of fear and confusion. Jack stepped closer, looking him in the eyes with an intensity that made anyone feel a chill. However, Brock, trying to maintain his authority, attempted to recover and responded, "I was just doing my job. I saw something that seemed suspicious, and I don't care if you're from the FBI. Here, I'm the one who enforces the law." Hearing this, Jack felt a mix of disbelief and fury. It wasn't the first time he'd encountered someone abusing their power, but he never imagined it would be directed at his own daughter. However, he decided to stay calm. He leaned toward Claire, who was looking at him with teary eyes, and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, honey. I'm here now." Then, without taking his eyes off Brock, he added in a firm voice, "What you're doing is not only unjust, but it's on the verge of being illegal. I suggest you reconsider your actions." The tension in the air was palpable. The few people who had been in the park had stopped to watch, and the scene could no longer be ignored. Brock, aware of the eyes on him and the risk to his reputation, reluctantly released Claire's wheelchair. But before leaving, he threw one last contemptuous glance and muttered something Jack barely caught. "We'll see if the law keeps protecting people like you." Jack said nothing, but inside, something ignited. He knew that Officer Brock wouldn't get away with it, but at that moment, The most important thing was to calm his daughter and take her home. Laura, still trembling from the tension, thanked Jack with a look of relief, and together they headed to their car, leaving behind the officer who glared at them with barely contained rage. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of Officer Brock holding Claire's wheelchair in his mind. He knew something was wrong. He had investigated hundreds of people in his career and had an infallible instinct for recognizing when someone was hiding something. He decided he couldn't stay idle. The next day, back at the FBI office, he made some calls and began reviewing information about Officer Brock. What he discovered was much more disturbing than he had imagined. Brock had been in the police force for over 10 years, but his record was filled with complaints of inappropriate conduct, abuse of power, and acts of unjustified violence. However, somehow, he had managed to evade any serious sanctions and continued patrolling the streets with a freedom he didn't deserve. As Jack delved deeper into the records, he noticed a pattern. Brock tended to target vulnerable people, those who could hardly defend themselves or lacked influence. Everything pointed to him using his badge to intimidate and abuse his power. The last straw came when Jack discovered an internal report detailing an incident in which Brock had been involved in a suspicious operation. Although the document was encrypted, Jack had enough resources to get more details. After an arduous investigation, he uncovered that Brock was involved in corruption and extortion, using his authority for personal gain. Jack knew this went beyond a simple abuse of power in a park. He now had solid evidence that Brock was not just a problematic officer, but a real danger to society. After gathering all the evidence, Jack decided it was time to act. He scheduled a meeting with the town's police chief and brought along all the documentation about Brock. He knew facing someone within the same institution wouldn't be easy, but he was also aware that he couldn't allow someone like him to continue enforcing the law. In the meeting, Jack presented his case clearly and without hesitation. The police chief, upon seeing the evidence, remained silent. He knew he had a bombshell on his hands, something that could affect the entire police force's image. Agent Thompson, this is serious. If all of this is true, we're facing a very delicate situation, said the police chief. There's no doubt, Chief. I've verified every document. It's not just about what he did to my daughter, but all the people he's mistreated and abused. If we don't act, the damage will be even greater. After a long conversation, the police chief agreed to initiate an internal investigation. However, Jack knew that bureaucracy and political interests could slow down the process. He decided that in addition to the formal route, he had to do something to ensure Brock wouldn't hold authority again. Using his contacts in the press, Jack leaked part of the information about Brock. Within days, the media began publishing stories about the officer's complaints and history, and the community erupted in outrage. With public pressure and the ongoing investigation, Brock was suspended from his duties and faced charges for abuse of power and other crimes. Jack, though satisfied with having achieved justice, knew the fight wasn't over. There was still much to do to clean up corruption and protect the innocent. But now, every time he took Claire to the park, he could see her smile without fear, secure in the knowledge that her father would always be there to protect her.